Welcome to the ultimate deep dive into the hidden history of the biggest boy band on the planet. When you look at BTS today, what do you see? You see sold-out stadiums, private jets, global diplomacy, and net worths that look like phone numbers. It is easy to forget that the Bulletproof Boy Scouts wasn't just a cool name, it was a necessity. They had to be bulletproof because life was constantly firing shots at them. Before the fame, before the glossy magazine covers, and before the world knew their names, they were just 7 young boys in South Korea, broke, hungry, and hustling in the most unexpected ways just to survive another day. We aren't talking about rehearsing in a studio. We are talking about the real world, the grind of menial labor, the sweat of the working class, and the rough jobs that built their character. Have you ever wondered what it takes to go from delivering newspapers to delivering speeches at the United Nations? Can you imagine your bias, the idol who now wears Rolexes, once scrubbing tables or fearing for his life on a delivery bike? Tonight, we are peeling back the layers of stardom to reveal the calloused hands underneath. From the dangerous streets of Daegu to the humble farmlands of Gochang, we have tracked down the specific, gritty part-time jobs that each member endured. Who was the newspaper delivery boy? Who worked at a BBQ restaurant? And who faced a life-altering accident while working a thankless delivery job? This is the story of blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. We have ranked them from number 7 to number 1, uncovering the struggles that prove their success wasn't given, it was earned. Get ready to have your perspective shifted and your heart touched. This is the top 7 rough and part-time jobs BTS members did before debut. Number 7. Kim Seok-jin's The Visual Prince's Secret Life in the Mud, Kim Seok-jin's humble days as a strawberry farm laborer. We're starting our countdown with a revelation that feels almost illegal to visualize. When you think of Kim Seok-jin, or Jin as the world knows him, what is the first image that floods your mind? Is it the pristine, untouchable aura of the worldwide handsome? Is it the son of a CEO, the man who looks like he was born wearing a tuxedo, sipping wine in a high-rise in Gangnam? The narrative surrounding Jin has always been one of effortless elegance and perhaps a comfortable upbringing. But hold on, because the truth of his pre-debut life contains a chapter so earthy, so grounded, and so physically demanding that it completely shatters the rich prince stereotype. Before the cameras, before the flashing lights of the red carpet, and before he became the oldest brother who cooks for 6 hungry boys, Jin was knee-deep in the soil. Yes, you heard that right. Our number 7 spot goes to the time Jin worked as a manual laborer on a strawberry farm. This wasn't just a cute weekend hobby for a wealthy kid. This was real, sweaty, back-breaking agricultural labor. We need to transport ourselves away from the neon lights of Seoul and head into the humid, sticky air of the Korean countryside. Picture the scene. It's peak of summer, the air is thick enough to chew, and the sun is beating down relentlessly on the plastic coverings of the greenhouse tunnels. Inside these tunnels, the temperature skyrockets, creating a stifling sauna that makes you sweat within seconds. And there, crouching in the dirt, isn't an idol, but a young Kim Seok-jin working at his uncle's strawberry farm. Let's break down why this is considered a rough job in the context of his journey. Strawberry farming is deceptively difficult. It's not just walking through a field and plucking fruit like you were in a Disney movie. It requires hours of maintaining a squatting position, ducking under low-hanging structures, and meticulously checking the fruit. For a young man who would later be known for his broad shoulders and tall physique, this kind of cramped, repetitive physical labor takes a massive toll on the lower back and knees. Imagine the contrast. The hands that now hold microphones worth thousands of dollars were once stained red with berry juice and covered in the grit of the earth. Why did he do it? It speaks volumes about his character. Despite coming from a stable background, Jin wasn't above the grind. He stepped in to help his family, engaging in the kind of work that leaves you exhausted to your bones by sunset. This experience, often glossed over in quick trivia, is actually fundamental to understanding Jin's role in BTS. You see, farming teaches patience. You cannot rush a strawberry, you cannot force it to grow. You have to nurture it, wait for it, and protect it until it's ready. Doesn't that sound exactly like what he did for the younger members of BTS? When he joined the group, he wasn't the best singer or the best dancer initially. He was a student of the craft, starting from scratch, much like a farmer planting a seed. He had to cultivate his talent with the same tedious, repetitive dedication he learned in those strawberry fields. Furthermore, this job stripped away any ego. When you are covered in dirt, hauling crates of fruit, and sweating through your clothes, you aren't a visual, you're a worker. This grounding experience is likely what kept him so humble despite his astronomical rise to fame. While other trainees might have been focusing solely on their image, Jin already knew the value of hard labor. He understood that the sweetest fruit, or in his case, the sweetest success, only comes after the most grueling work. There is also a beautiful emotional layer to this story involving his family connection. In Korean culture, helping out with the family business is a sign of filial piety. But for a young man of his age who could have been out partying or playing video games, choosing to spend his time working on a farm shows a deep sense of responsibility. It was here, amidst the greenery and the soil, that the mom figure of BTS was partially forged. He learned the value of food, the effort it takes to produce it, and the satisfaction of feeding others, traits he carried directly into the dorms where he would later cook endless meals for RM, Suga, and the rest. So the next time you see Jin blowing a hand kiss to a stadium of 50,000 screaming fans, I want you to pause and overlay that image with the young boy in the strawberry patch. See the sweat on his brow, the dirt under his fingernails, and the ache in his back. It proves that his beauty isn't just skin deep. It is built on a foundation of grit, humility, and a willingness to get his hands dirty. He didn't just wake up as a star. He worked for it, one strawberry and one dance step at a time. This rough start at number 7 is a gentle but powerful reminder that before they were idols, they were just boys trying to find their way in the world, one odd job at a time. Number 6. Kim Tae-young's The Gucci Boy's Roots in the Soil. Kim Tae-young's destiny as a Gochang farmer. We are moving from the strawberry fields of the eldest to the deep, isolated valleys of Gochang to find our number 6. If you follow the fashion world, you know Kim Tae-young, or V, as the human embodiment of luxury. He is the man who can wear a feather boa and make it look like high fashion. He is the muse of Celine, the boy who shuts down Paris Fashion Week just by stepping out of a car. But strip away the designer labels, the expertly styled hair, and the flashing cameras, and you find a story that is starkly different from the glitz of K-pop. Before he was V, he was a boy who genuinely believed his destiny was not on a stage, but in a field. Our number 6 spot is dedicated to Kim Tae-young's life as a farmhand and his upbringing in the rural heartland of Korea. This wasn't a summer job for V. This was his life. Unlike many idols who grew up in the bustling, competitive streets of Seoul or Busan, Tae-young was raised by his grandmother in Gochang, a place known for its apples and its quiet, slow-moving pace. It is crucial to understand the atmosphere here to grasp the roughness of his pre-debut reality. Imagine a place where there are no subways, no 24-hour convenience stores on every corner, and where the silence of the night is broken only by crickets, not sirens. In this setting, V wasn't practicing poses in a mirror. He was helping his grandmother with the daily, grueling tasks of rural survival. We are talking about waking up before the sun, not to go to school, but to tend to the land. While his peers in the city were glued to smartphones or attending cram schools, hagwons, Tae-young was learning the language of the earth. He has openly stated in interviews, with a seriousness that touches the soul, that if he hadn't been scouted, he would be a farmer today. This isn't just a humble brag, it was his concrete plan. The roughness here lies in the isolation and the physical demand of the lifestyle. Farming in Gochang isn't mechanized industrial agriculture, it's hands-on. It involves crouching for hours to pull weeds, checking crops for pests, and enduring the biting cold of rural Korean winters and the suffocating humidity of summers. Imagine the hands that now wear Cartier rings, pulling stubborn roots from the dry earth. Imagine the back that now carries the weight of global stardom, bending over to harvest crops to help put food on the table. This lifestyle instilled in him a unique purity and a lack of materialism that defined his early trainee days. Remember the story of the expensive North Face jacket? His mother bought it for him before he moved to Seoul, not because they were rich, far from it, but because she was terrified the city boys would mock her son for his rural background. That jacket was armor, paid for with the sweat of a family that worked the land. The job here was the job of survival and filial piety. He was his grandmother's hands and feet. This background explains so much about V's personality. His alien or unique perspective cited by fans isn't because he's strange, it's because he grew up with nature, not neon. He learned to observe the world with the patience of a farmer waiting for rain. The emotional weight of this number is heavy. He wasn't chasing fame. Fame found him. He went to the audition merely to support a friend, not intending to try out himself, which is the classic behavior of someone who is content with their humble path. He was ready to accept a life of anonymity and hard labor in Gochang. When he arrived in Seoul, he was the country bumpkin, in the most affectionate sense, wide-eyed and innocent, clashing with the sharp-edged ambition of the city trainees. The transition from a boy who talked to plants to a global icon who speaks to millions is jarring. Every time you see V walking through an airport with that effortless, intimidating charisma, remember the boy in the oversized clothes running through the fields of Gochang? His rough job was the job of living a life that the modern world had forgotten. It was a life of dirt, simplicity, and love for his grandmother, a foundation that keeps him grounded even as he flies on private jets. He is the farmer who planted a dream he didn't know he had, and the world is lucky enough to watch it bloom. Number 5. J-Hope. The street fighter of Gwangju, Jung Ho-seok's bruising battles as an underground dancer, fighting for respect on the concrete floor. We are leaving the quiet farmlands behind and diving headfirst into the chaotic, neon-lit alleys of Gwangju to find our number 5. If you know J-Hope today, you know him as the sunshine of BTS, the man with the million-watt smile who brings hope to millions. But before he was J-Hope, he was Jung Ho-seok, and in the underground world of street dance, he wasn't known for his smile, he was known for his bite. Our number 5 spot goes to J-Hope's intense, physically punishing career as a competitive street dancer and member of the dance crew Neuron. You might be thinking, dancing isn't a rough job, is it? Think again. We are not talking about air-conditioned studios with mirrors and water breaks. We are talking about the gritty, unforgiving culture of underground street battles. Before debut, Ho-seok was a local celebrity, but that fame was bought with sweat, blood, and bruising physical labor. Imagine a young boy, barely in high school, spending his nights on hard concrete, throwing his body into gravity-defying freezes and pops until his muscles screamed. This was his part-time job, his obsession, and his lifeline. The roughness here comes from the environment and the stakes. In the street dance scene of Gwangju, you didn't dance for applause, you danced for survival and reputation. Ho-seok wasn't just a participant, he was a warrior. He would travel for hours to neighboring cities to compete in dance battles where the prize money wasn't a luxury, but a necessity to fund his passion and prove his worth. This lifestyle took a massive toll on his developing body. The job required him to push his physicality to the breaking point, repeatedly slamming his knees and joints against hard surfaces to perfect a move. While other kids were studying or sleeping, Hoseok was out in the streets, battling crews much older and tougher than him. There is a deep emotional conflict here as well. His father, a strict literature teacher, initially opposed his dancing. Can you imagine the mental burden? He wasn't just fighting opponents on the dance floor, he was fighting for his father's approval. He had to treat this passion like a serious job to prove it had a future. He worked as a backup dancer, he entered competitions to bring home trophies, and he hustled to make a name for himself as Smile Hoya. This period of his life was defined by a desperate hunger, a hunger to be seen, to be respected, and to turn his movement into a career. It was a lonely, exhausting grind. When you see J-Hope today leading the choreography for BTS, correcting the members with sharp precision, that authority comes from these streets. He learned discipline not from a textbook, from the harsh reality that if you miss a beat in a battle, you lose. He learned that talent is nothing without the work ethic to back it up. The sunshine we see now was forged in the dark, sweaty clubs of Gwangju, where he learned that the only way to shine is to burn brighter than everyone else. He turned his body into a machine, sacrificing his youth to the rhythm, working a job that offered no guarantees, only the thrill of the next battle. This is the story of a boy who danced until he collapsed, proving that his rough start was the rhythm that would eventually move the world. Number 4. Jungkook's Stumble. The Golden Maknae's street struggle. Jungkook's anonymous days as a flyer distributor. We have reached the halfway mark of our journey, and number 4 brings us to the youngest member of the group, the Golden Maknae, Jungkook. When you look at Jungkook today, what do you see? You see a global pop icon who can sing, dance, rap, paint, box, and edit videos with professional precision. He is the sold-out king, a man whose mere touch turns obscure brands into multi-million-dollar empires overnight. If he drinks a certain kombucha, it vanishes from shelves globally. If he wears a specific fabric softener, the company's stock skyrockets. He is the most searched K-pop idol on YouTube, the face that adorns billboards in Times Square, and the voice that opened the FIFA World Cup. It seems impossible, almost laughable, to imagine a world where Jungkook was ignored. It seems inconceivable that there was a time when he stood right in front of people, reaching out to them, and they simply walked past him as if he were a ghost. But that is exactly the story of our number 4 spot. Before the Golden Touch, Jungkook worked one of the most thankless, invisible, and psychologically draining part-time jobs for a teenager. He was a flyer distributor on the busy, indifferent streets of South Korea. This wasn't a job for the faint of heart, especially not for a boy like Jungkook. We have to rewind the clock to his early trainee days. He was just a kid, barely 15 years old, who had left his home in Busan to chase a dream in the terrifyingly massive city of Seoul. Remember, the Jungkook of that era wasn't the confident, tattooed, lip-pierced superstar we know now. He was famously, painfully shy. He was the boy who would wait until the other members fell asleep to take a shower because he was too embarrassed to be seen. He was the boy who curled up in the corner of the practice room, terrified of his own shadow. Now, take that shy, introverted boy and throw him onto a bustling street corner filled with rushing commuters, angry businessmen, and indifferent students, and tell him to force a piece of paper into their hands. This wasn't just physical labor, it was a daily battle against social anxiety. The roughness of this job lies in the crushing weight of rejection. Have you ever handed out flyers? It is a lesson in humility. You stand there, freezing in the winter wind or baking in the summer asphalt heat, extending your hand hundreds of times an hour, only to be met with annoyed glances, rude dismissals, or worst of all, total invisibility. People dodge you. They pretend they don't see you. They treat you like an obstacle on the sidewalk. For a young Jungkook whose identity was still forming, this must have been a grueling mental test. He wasn't Jungkook of BTS yet. He was just a kid in an oversized hoodie trying to do a job. There are stories and anecdotes that suggest he did this to help out, to earn a little extra pocket money, or simply as part of the rigorous, character-building lifestyle of a trainee under a small agency like Big Hit, which was struggling financially at the time. They didn't have the budget for marketing teams. Sometimes the trainees were the marketing team. Imagine the irony that brings tears to your eyes. The hands that were shoving crumpled flyers into the pockets of strangers are the same hands that now hold the microphone at Wembley. The face that people looked away from in annoyance is now the face that millions of fans would pay a fortune just to glimpse for a second. This experience likely forged a deep sense of resilience in the young maknae. It taught him that the world doesn't owe you attention, you have to earn it. It taught him the value of the person at the bottom of the ladder. This is why even today, you see Jungkook bowing 90 degrees to staff members, helping cameramen with their cables, and picking up trash on the stage. He remembers. He remembers what it feels like to be the invisible worker on the street. He knows that every person has a story, and no one deserves to be looked through. The emotional weight of this number 4 spot is staggering because it highlights the pure innocence of his struggle. He didn't have to do it for survival in the same way as others might have, but he did it as part of his journey, accepting the lowliest task without complaint. It breaks the illusion of the golden child who had everything handed to him. He started from the pavement, quite literally. So, the next time you see Jungkook commanding the stage with that fierce, unstoppable energy, remember the shy boy on the street corner. Remember the cold wind biting his cheeks as he held out a flyer, hoping just one person would take it. He wasn't born a king. He started as the messenger that nobody wanted to listen to. Number 3. Kim Namjoon's. The genius leader's dusty secret. Kim Namjoon's gritty shift as a construction site laborer. We are entering the top 3, the podium of pain, the trinity of toughness, and sitting heavily at number 3 is a story that defies logic, a narrative that clashes so violently with the present reality that it feels like a glitch in the Matrix. When you think of Kim Namjoon, known to the world as RM, what is the archetype that forms in your mind? He is the leader, the pillar, the intellectual giant. He is the man with an IQ of 148, a score that places him in the top percentile of human intelligence. He's the eloquent diplomat addressing the United Nations General Assembly, speaking fluent English with a poise that world leaders envy. He is the art connoisseur strolling through galleries in silence, the poet who weaves complex philosophy into rap lyrics, and the god of destruction who clumsily breaks figurines. We see him as a man of the mind, a cerebral force, but strip away the suits, the glasses, and the polished aura of a global ambassador, and you will find a chapter in his teenage years that is covered in gray dust and sweat. Before he was leading the biggest band in the world, the genius boy was hauling bricks. Yes, our number 3 spot is dedicated to the mind-blowing fact that RM worked as a manual laborer at a construction site. This is the ultimate paradox. A brain capable of solving complex mathematical problems and learning languages from friends' reruns was utilized to shovel cement and carry heavy loads. To understand the gravity of this rough job, we have to understand the immense pressure Namjoon was under. He wasn't just a random kid. kid, he was an academic prodigy. His parents, understandably, wanted him to pursue a stable, high-ranking career, a lawyer, a doctor, a corporate executive. Music was seen as a distraction, a risky gamble that would ruin his bright future. The story goes that this stint in construction wasn't just for pocket money, it was a lesson. It was a confrontation with the real world. Imagine the scene. A young Namjoon, slender and perhaps a bit awkward with his limbs, standing on a chaotic construction site. The air is thick with the choking dust of drywall and concrete. The noise is deafening. Jackhammers, shouting foremen, the clanging of metal scaffolding. This is not a library. This is not a recording studio. This is a place where physical strength is the only currency that matters, and your IQ score means absolutely nothing if you can't lift a bag of cement. For a boy who lived in his head, this must have been a jarring, exhausting shock to the system. The roughness here is twofold: physical and existential. Physically, construction work is brutal. It destroys your back, calluses your hands, and leaves you trembling with fatigue by the end of the shift. For a teenager not used to this intensity, every muscle fiber would have been screaming. But the existential toll was likely heavier. Imagine being there, sweating under a hard hat, looking at the gray concrete and thinking, is this it? Is this what happens if I give up on my dream? It was in these moments of grueling repetition, lift, carry, drop, repeat, that his resolve was likely tested and hardened. There is a famous anecdote where he noted that his father perhaps wanted him to realize how hard society is, hoping the physical labor would scare him back into his textbooks. Instead, it arguably did the opposite. It might have fueled the fire. It might have made him realize that he would rather struggle as a rapper than die slowly in a life he didn't choose. Or perhaps it gave him a profound respect for the working class, a perspective that bleeds into his lyrics today. Namjoon's lyrics often touch on the mundane struggles of life, the feeling of being a cog in the machine, and the dust of the city. Where do you think that comes from? It comes from the construction site. It comes from knowing what it feels like to be a small, exhausted body against a massive, unfeeling structure. When he raps about the pressures of society, he isn't speaking from an ivory tower. He's speaking from the scaffolding. This job strips away the elitist image of the genius. It proves that RM isn't afraid of work, no matter how menial. It shows that before he built a legacy, he literally helped build walls. The image of the god of destruction takes on a new meaning here. Perhaps he was clumsy because his mind was always somewhere else, composing verses while his hands were mixing mortar. This experience is the grounding wire for his electric intellect. It ensures that no matter how high he flies, he remembers the texture of the ground. He knows the weight of labor. He knows that cities aren't built by magic, they are built by sweat. So the next time you see RM standing tall, delivering a speech that moves millions, remember the boy in the construction vest. Remember that the shoulders carrying the weight of BTS's leadership were once carrying bricks. He didn't just study the world to understand it. He worked in it, sweated in it, and built his character on the rough, dusty foundations of manual labor. This is the story of a genius who got his hands dirty to keep his dream clean, proving that the smartest mind is also the one willing to do the hardest work. Number 2. Park Jimin's. The Swan's agonizing transformation in the shadows, Park Jimin's sleepless night shift as the practice room's prisoner and survivalist. We have reached the runner-up spot, the silver medal of struggle, and this entry is perhaps the most psychologically tormenting of them all. If number 3 was about physical labor and number 4 was about social rejection, number 2 is about the terrifying, suffocating pressure of time and survival. When you look at Park Jimin today, you see the epitome of grace. He is the human Chanel, the idol whose dance lines are so exquisite they are studied by professionals, the man whose falsetto can shatter glass and melt hearts simultaneously. He moves with the fluidity of water and the precision of a laser. He looks like he was born on the stage, destined for the spotlight from his first breath. But the reality? The reality is that Jimin was the member closest to never making it. He wasn't just a trainee. He was a desperate survivalist working the most brutal shift imaginable, the 24-hour shift of the practice bug. Our number 2 spot explores Jimin's life as the practice room ghost, a role that required more blood, sweat, and tears than any minimum wage job ever could. While he didn't haul bricks or deliver newspapers, his job was arguably the most dangerous because his employment was threatened every single day. Let's set the scene in the gritty underground practice rooms of Big Hit Entertainment. Jimin was the last to join, the final piece of the puzzle, and he arrived with a massive target on his back. He had left everything behind in Busan. He was the top student at the prestigious Busan High School of Arts, a contemporary dance prodigy with a guaranteed future as a maestro. He traded that golden ticket for a dirty, uncertain lottery ticket in Seoul. The roughness of his pre-debut life was the sheer maddening volume of his labor. He has famously stated that he slept only 2 hours a night. 2 hours! Think about that. While the rest of the world slept, while even the other members eventually succumbed to exhaustion, Jimin was still there. He treated the practice room not as a school, but as a battlefield. He would lock himself in, practicing the same isolation movement, the same wave, the same footwork, thousands of times until his muscles failed. Why? Because he was on the brink of expulsion. It is a known fact that the company considered cutting him from the lineup not once, not twice, but 8 times. Can you imagine the mental toll of working a job where your boss tells you every day you probably won't make it? That was Jimin's reality. He was the intern who had to prove he belonged in the boardroom. He didn't have a bed. His bed was the hard, cold floor of the dance studio. He didn't have a pillow. He used his rolled-up clothes. He didn't have a scheduled break. He ate when he could, often starving himself due to the extreme pressure of diet culture and image maintenance during that era. The labor here was the painful reconstruction of his entire body. He had to unlearn the fluid, upright posture of modern dance to force his body into the gritty, hunched, aggressive style of hip-hop. It was physically violent for his body mechanics. He was constantly bruised, constantly sore, and constantly bleeding from the nose due to exhaustion. This wasn't just practicing. This was a young boy punishing himself into perfection. There is a haunting beauty in this struggle. He was the janitor of his own dream, scrubbing away his flaws in the dead of night. The other members have often recalled waking up in the middle of the night to hear the thumping of feet, knowing it was Jimin, still working, still fighting. He was the shadow worker of BTS, the one who turned the lights on and turned them off. This experience stripped him of any arrogance he might have had as a top student. In Seoul, he started from zero. He was the underdog of underdogs. The emotional weight of this number 2 spot is crushing because it highlights the loneliness of his ambition. He couldn't call his parents and say, "I'm doing well," because he wasn't. He was hanging by a thread, but he held on to that thread with a grip of steel. He turned his fear into fuel. He turned the threat of expulsion into a reason to stay awake for 1 more hour. This rough job of being the eternal trainee forged the perfectionist we see today. When you see Jimin collapse on stage after a performance, giving 110%, it's because his body remembers the time when 100% wasn't enough. He treats every performance like it's an audition for his life, because for a long time, it was. He didn't have a plan B. He burned the bridge back to Busan, so he had to conquer Seoul. So the next time you see Jimin smiling with his eyes formed into crescents, remember the boy sleeping on the studio floor, clutching his dream in the dark, working the hardest shift in the world just to earn his name. He is the living proof that hard work betrays no one, and that the most beautiful diamonds are created under the most crushing pressure. Number 1. Min Yoongi's, the broken wing that learned to fly. Min Yoongi's life-threatening tragedy as a delivery driver and the secret that almost killed BTS. We have arrived at the summit, the absolute peak of our list, the number one spot. This is not just a job. This is a survival horror story. This is the moment that could have ended BTS before it even began. When you look at Min Yoongi or Suga today, what do you see? You see a king. You see the man who produced That for Psy, the man who collaborates with IU, Halsey, and Coldplay. You see a genius producer with a net worth that allows him to buy buildings in Hanamdong without blinking. You see a man who stands on stage with a quiet, terrifying confidence, rapping 80 words per second, spitting fire that burns down haters and critics alike. He is the hand of Midas, the backbone of the group's musical identity. But beneath the designer suits and the stoic expression, there is a physical scar and a phantom pain that tells a story of blood, asphalt, and desperation. Before the fame, Suga wasn't just working a rough job. He was gambling with his life every single day on the chaotic streets of Seoul. Our number one spot goes to the most dangerous, heartbreaking, and physically devastating job in BTS history, Min Yoongi's stint as a motorcycle delivery driver. This story is the definition of rough. To truly understand why this is number one, we have to strip away the idle glamour and look at the raw, painful reality of Min Yoongi's trainee days. Unlike some trainees who had financial support from their families, Yoongi was on his own. He came from Daegu with nothing but a thumb drive full of beats and a burning rage to succeed. But Seoul is expensive, and passion doesn't pay the rent. We are talking about a boy who had to make a daily choice, spend 1,000 won on a bowl of noodles and walk home for 2 hours, or take the bus and starve. That was his reality. He was selling his songs for pennies, often getting scammed, leaving him hungry and desperate. To survive, to pay his tuition, and to keep his dream alive, he took a job that many avoided due to its high risk, delivering food on a motorcycle. Picture the scene. It is 2012. The weather is miserable, a cold, slick, rainy night in Seoul. The streets are slippery, the visibility is poor, and the traffic is aggressive. A young Yoongi, exhausted from practice, hungry, and stressed about money, mounts a delivery bike. He isn't thinking about safety, he is thinking about the delivery fee. He is thinking about how he needs this money to stay in the dormitory. As he navigates an intersection, the world suddenly slows down. A car ignores the light. The screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal on metal. In one split second, the boy who would become a global superstar is thrown onto the cold, wet asphalt. The bike is wrecked, but worse, his shoulder, the shoulder that was supposed to carry the rap line of a future hip-hop group, is shattered. This is where the story shifts from a rough job to a psychological thriller. Most people would call an ambulance. Most people would call their parents. Yoongi? He did neither. He was terrified. He was terrified that if he told Big Hit, now Hybe, about the accident, they would fire him. He thought that if they knew he was damaged goods, unable to dance, his dream would be over. So what did he do? He stood up, he picked up the broken pieces of his bike and his body, he limped back to the dorms and told the biggest lie of his life. I fell down the stairs. Can you imagine the pain? A dislocated, shattered shoulder, and he's pretending it's a minor bruise? For months, he practiced with a broken wing. He danced through the agony, gritting his teeth so hard they might crack, forcing his arm to move when it wanted to scream. He was living in a constant state of physical torture, driven only by the fear of losing his spot in the group. The roughness of this job isn't just the accident. It's the silence that followed. It's the image of a young boy crying in the bathroom, turning on the faucet to hide his sobs because the pain was unbearable. It's the depression that followed, the sociophobia he raps about in his mistape August D. He was working a job that physically broke him, yet he couldn't stop because he had bills to pay. This went on until he physically couldn't hide it anymore. When the company finally found out, instead of firing him, Bang Si-hyuk quietly paid his tuition so he wouldn't have to work anymore. But the damage was done. That shoulder plagued him for years. Fans noticed him clutching it at airports. They noticed him favoring one side during choreography. It was a ticking bomb that he managed for nearly a decade until he finally underwent surgery in 2020. This number one spot is emotional because it represents the ultimate sacrifice. He literally gave a piece of his body for this dream. The lyrics in The Last, where he mentions the accident I pretended not to care about, the debut I grasped as if it were my life, send shivers down your spine because they are true. He wasn't working for pocket money to buy clothes. He was working to survive the system. The delivery job was the symbol of his war against poverty and obscurity. It was the rough reality that fueled his angry, passionate rapping style. When Suga raps, it sounds like he's fighting for his life, because for a long time, he was. The motorcycle accident is the foundational trauma of his career. It's the reason he is so protective of the younger members. It's the reason he values health over everything else now. It's the reason he tells fans to stay healthy with such intensity. He knows the cost of a broken body. The transition from the delivery boy lying on the asphalt wondering if he would ever walk again to the king occupying the main stage of stadiums is the most dramatic arc in K-pop history. He didn't just work a part-time job, he survived a near-death experience that was a direct result of his poverty. So, the next time you see Suga raising his microphone to the sky or simply sitting in his studio producing a masterpiece, remember the rain, the crash, and the lie. Remember the shoulder that carried the weight of the world. Remember that the roughness he endured wasn't just calloused hands, it was a shattered bone and a broken spirit that he had to rebuild piece by piece, all on his own. He is the ultimate survivor, the delivery boy who delivered himself to greatness. This is why Men Yoongi is our indisputable number one, because his job didn't just build character, it almost took his life, and he defeated it to become a legend.